welcome. I am so excited today to be introducing you to my very new series on Aleckson TV. It is called Transformational Conversations, and we're going to take, with the guests that we've got throughout the season, we're going to take the conversation around spirituality, consciousness, law of attraction, and all of those areas. We're going to take it beyond the leading edge. So we're going to delve into things that might be new ideas to you, and just give you the opportunity to see how they feel. Perhaps start thinking about what you're doing and what you're believing and these sorts of things a little bit more fully. So my invitation to you is to leave all of your judgments behind, leave all of your current belief systems behind, and just come on in, have a conversation with myself and my guests, and see where it takes you. We're in episode 1, and I'm so excited to introduce you to my beautiful friend, Rebecca Gibson.
Hi.
Now, Rebecca is a forward-thinking medium. She helps heart-centered soulpreneurs align their soul and path with their business. Her strategic approach and experience allows her to combine spiritual guidance with tangible methods for her clients to step into deep levels of confidence and expand their energy and self-awareness. She works with people ready to serve humanity on a higher level by illuminating their path and their psyche, bringing a deeper understanding of what is really possible in life and business. And when she's not having conversations with me that take us to the leading edge and beyond, Rebecca can be found writing her books, loving her toddler, and guiding people to step into their true inner potential. So welcome, Rebecca. It's so exciting to have you here. Welcome to the very first episode of Transformational Conversations, and I cannot wait to get started. What I'd like to do is invite you from where you are right now to simply talk to us a little bit about who you are and where you've come from and why you're doing what you do.
That's a loaded question, who I am and where I come from. I'm a mum and I'm a wife, and my business is I'm a psychic medium / spiritual coach, mentor, but I come from a background in 20 years of health. So I started out nursing, then I specialized in psychiatry, and I worked in some very interesting high-level consulting positions in mental health. I spent a very long time working in correctional centres, and that was a very interesting part of my career. And I've worked a lot in adult emergency psych, and now what I do is I blend my very left brain health background and all about mind and ego and emotion and mental state and physical state, and now I blend it in with this spiritual business, and I'm focused on spiritual health, and I like to blend them all together so I can help my clients be the healthiest that they can be holistically, and then use it to manifest this life of joy and abundance and create basically whatever they want.
Fantastic. And I'm sure you do amazing work with your clients. In fact, I know you do. I know you do. What I'd really love to delve into a little bit to start with is your background in the psych arena, because I think it's a really special part of what you do for others. There's elements of that come into any reading that you do, and certainly the intellect that you put into your programs and what you're offering these days. So I'd love to just very quickly have a little glimpse into that background.
Well, the majority of that 20 years was spent as an autonomous mental health practitioner consulting in New South Wales correctional centres. All of my patients, clients, all of my patients were males in maximum security prison. There's a lot of sex offenders, murderers, rapists, people in for assault. Some people were in for not paying fines, but I tended to spend a lot of my time with the more dramatic of clients, I guess, and then working a lot with inmates that have mental illness, and then trying to manage that within the confines of a correctional centre and the confines of the kinds of people that they're integrating with in their life, and that's where they live, that's their life. And I find that background, because I have deeply gone into the consciousness and the emotional mental state of thousands of people from all walks of life, all of them at absolute rock bottom. So it was my job, other than managing their mental state and the stuff that went along with that, is to pick them up from rock bottom and show them there is a different path than what you're walking now, and open up that level of consciousness for them so they could see that the choices that they'd made up until then didn't have to define the person who they were or the life that they will continue to lead. So I kind of really honed in that skill during that job, plus having a very safe space provided for them to divulge a lot of stuff. I mean, I did a lot of court reports. I had to really know the nitty-gritty of what had got them into jail in the first place. And I could not have done my job as well as I did if I'd held a place of judgment, or my heart was closed off to who they were and where they'd come from and what had got them to that point where they had committed an offence that had landed them in jail. And I find now with my clients, it is a very safe space for my clients. And I find that my readings are much different from other psychic meetings because I have that background, and because I had spent so long working with people at rock bottom, and I understand mental health so well, and I understand people's consciousness so well. And I have such empathy. I know this is really strange to people, but I have such empathy for the condition that people had got themselves into, which then leads to this very interesting way my life fell into shadow side work, and then what I do now with the shadow side stuff, and it's all just blending nicely. People don't think that the two would relate to each other, but they actually do. And I thought that I was the only one, but I've just discovered there's a Dr. Judith Orloff who's a psychiatrist, and she's also a psychic medium, so she's been blending the two as well.
She's amazing, isn't she?
Oh,
so, yeah, no.
I was just, thank God I'm not the only one.
I think there's probably more and more coming out, you see, because I think there's never anything, you know, the universe is always happening for us. So as more and more people start to wake up and need to face those parts of themselves and learn how to heal them, then of course there's going to have to be more people to serve that need. So it makes total sense that you'll find more, and you know, and you'll encourage some just by you doing it. You'll encourage others who might be kind of on the edge of.
It's almost like you have to come out of the spiritual closet, because I've always had the ability to tune into energy that is in non-physical form. Right from when I was a toddler, I can remember my first time that I actually saw a passed over spirit. But when you start working in that kind of position, especially 20 years ago, when we were talking about early to mid-90s, people were very closed off to spirituality, and it was considered to be a part of psychotic illness if you were to talk about the stuff that I talk about now, or you would be treated with pharmacotherapy for having hallucinations, and there was no rationality that psychiatry could see in any of the spiritual stuff that came out. So you don't talk about it. You shut it all down and you pretend that you're not who you are, and then you live this life of being inauthentic because you don't want your colleagues to judge you.
Yes, and I imagine that was really, really hard, being that you were in that arena where that's what it's all about, the study of those sorts of things that many of us consider to be normal these days, those of us working in the industry. You know, what I really love is that when we look into people's past lives, past this lifetime, the things that people did in corporate arenas and in medical arenas, and we look at what they're doing now, those of us who've started to step out of the spiritual closet, so to speak, as you say, I love the way, and I encourage it in all of my clients as well, that we can smush together, and that's my special word that I use for it, smush together.
So scientific.
Everything from the past and everything that you're now doing to make this beautiful concoction that's right for right now.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you get a lot of, and you probably get this as well, a lot of entrepreneurs who are starting their business and they're wanting to do it in the spiritual arena. And they want to just delete everything that they've learned in the past and not bring that experience with them. But it's really important to bring it, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. We all have these experiences for a reason. My life took me down that path for an absolute reason. And it was all to get me to where I am now. And spiritual health is vital for us. We're spiritual beings. Our spiritual health will affect our physical and our mental, emotional health. And humanity has gotten to the point where we put our spiritual health last because of all these taboos that are attached to it, which have come from religious consciousness and all this control over the patriarchy and all of that sort of stuff. But now I think people are getting to the stage they can't ignore their spiritual health. It's a calling. They know that there's other different, their consciousness is expanding and they need to understand why, and they're starting to question everything that we've, you know, been living up until now. And so they should, because what we're doing is not working for us, is it? We're, as a race, we're declining. Like a lot of us are ascending, but so many of us are just, there's just so much crap going on in the world right now.
Yeah, it's not absolutely not the best time, but it's also, it's on one hand, it's at a terrible, terrible time. And on the other hand, there's so much excitement out there in the non-physical for what we're evolving into and how the world's evolving and where we're going with that. So I'm really excited about that. Yes, there's those levels of fear, but there's also pretty much like any change that anybody, whether they're physical, non-physical, or the earth, whenever we're going through any great change, we've got to balance the fear with the excitement. And then just make a choice. Do I go into the fear? Do I go into the excitement? I like going into the excitement personally.
Me too.
I want to ask you about, I know that you've got a great webinar coming up next week, I believe.
Yes.
And it's all, from what not that I've had a good look at it, but it's based on heart, the electromagnetic field and the stuff that goes on in your heart, empathy and all of these sorts of things. So I'd love to hear, because I know, we've had a few conversations, which is the reason that I decided to start doing these shows, is that I have the most amazing leading edge conversations with clients who are all opening up to their innate abilities and starting to do their spiritual work in the world, whether we call it spiritual work or not, their work in the world. And everyone says to me, oh, we should have recorded this. What an amazing conversation. I think you were one of the people who said that to me.
Yeah,
and so this idea kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger, that I had to start doing this and allowing people to be a fly on the wall, so to speak, of the conversations that I have that take us beyond where we currently are. So tell me all about where you're going with that and what your great learnings are around the heart, obviously without giving us your webinar, but essentially give us some idea of where you're going with it, what you've learned, what we really need to know about those sorts of things.
It did start out just as a rant about some big name coaches telling people to hustle, and I've wanted to tell people stop hustling and surrender into the flow, which is the title of the webinar, because hustle leads to burnout, and I've experienced burnout in my lifetime, and it's debilitating. And there's not enough stuff out there to teach you the warning signs and how not to get to the stage where you're going to burn out. And burnout can be many things for different people. It can be physically unwell. People can get extremely anxious and have mental health issues that they've not had before. And if you're working in a business and you are the business, you can't afford to be burnt out. The damage and the repercussions of you burning out in your own business could be catastrophic to your business and then to you as a person. So the webinar started out that wanting to teach people how not to burn out, wanting to teach people how best to look after their holistic health. So I'm really focused on physical health, emotional and mental health, and spiritual health. And doing research for the webinar and trying to find a way to articulate myself that I can teach people how to get into flow and what flow is. I've been really drawn to a lot of the work that's been doing around the heart and a lot of the physics and biology, the science that's now catching up with stuff that spiritually awakened and aware people have known for millennia.
Yes.
So it's really interesting to see now what's happening. They can measure the electromagnetic field of the heart. They can measure the vibrational frequencies of emotions. They can measure what happens to the electromagnetic field of the heart when people experience certain emotions and how those vibrational frequencies that they're set at, because each emotion has its own hertz. What happens when there's a bunch of those particular emotions flooded into the heart space and what happens with the electromagnetic field. They can measure the electromagnetic field, and they say on average most people have 3 feet in diameter of this energetic field. So when you're mixing with people, your heart energies are all kind of bumping, colliding and getting entangled in one another. So there's all this research around the heart and leading into flow, and then there's stuff around our heart is actually our primary source of intelligence and consciousness, and that our brain isn't that thing that controls us. And they've known that for such a long time because our body can survive when we're brain dead, and there can be absolutely no electrical activity going on in the brain, but your body can survive however long your heart decides that it's going to. And when they measure the electric frequencies and impulses that come out of the heart and the communication that happens, the heart actually communicates to the rest of the body far more than what the brain does. And the heart has a very complex nervous system, and now there are actually cardiologists who specialize in cardioneurology. So there's some really interesting research coming out. And so they've been doing research on sportsmen and what happens with their electromagnetic frequencies with their heart based on their consciousness at the time, zoning out and focusing on what it is that
flow.
And they're finding that this is what's called flow. So I think there's an actual specific term for it. I can't really remember what it is. What is that term? Doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, that's all right. We'll figure that one out. We'll pop it somewhere where people need to know.
something to do with your coherent state. And I'm finding now that a lot of spiritual people have been talking about your heart center and being a heart center person, going into your heart center and not explaining why or how you would do that. So as part of my webinar, I explain why you would want to do that and how you go about doing it and the results of what come with that. So a lot of my stuff that I explain that comes from a spiritual sense and is very much of consciousness conversation comes from a very left brain grounded. I need to understand the science behind this. I want to understand how it works because I've spent so long. I'm not going to implement that therapy if I don't see the research behind it. So yeah. I'm really loving that there's research coming out now, and it's tangible stuff that people can really grab onto so they can understand. The more they understand, the more their consciousness opens and the more they can grasp these ideas and take them on.
Yes, absolutely. I have a very favourite meme that I use on social media from time to time, and it says that science is magic that hasn't been explained yet.
So true.
Or magic is science, either way.
And
essentially that's what we're finding, aren't we?
The brains of quantum physicists, and they're so open and receptive of all the stuff that happens in different dimensions that they don't understand how psychic they truly are.
Well,
but people, they don't get it. All this technology that's being built now, it's all just a pattern of humanity and how we communicate and
of what's already happening.
Yeah, because we're all walking around Wi-Fi towers basically, picking up all these 3-dimensional thoughts, and then when you awaken, all of a sudden you're tapping into 4-dimensional stuff, and that's when you can have conversations with passed over loved ones and spirits and ghosts and all of that terminology that's used for fourth dimension consciousness.
Yes.
And then the rest of us the awakening, we go past that into the fifth dimension and stuff, and then we can see the different thought pattern, because we have different thoughts, because our internal Wi-Fi is picking up something else now.
Picking up a different frequency, absolutely, absolutely. So that brings me to the conversation around empaths and empathy.
My favourite.
Yeah, and I love it too, because it was one of the very first things that I noticed that was different about me, when I always thought of empathy as being a good thing. That was just my understanding of it. It just
made a good thing.
Yeah, but there's a lot of talk out there about it being a not so good thing, about it being a victim thing, about it being you're needing to protect yourself from everybody else because everybody else's energy was impinging on yours, and all of these old beliefs that we have around empathy. I want to dig in with you and have a conversation about empathy.
You want me to get ranty? I ranty.
I didn't think about that expression, but I certainly do want you to get passionate.
I do get passionate because I am an empath. I had no idea, even the word empath, what an empath was. None of this until I decided to explore my spiritual health after going on maternity leave from my job. And I'm classic empath. It's a lifetime of being told right from the get-go, you are too sensitive, you're too emotional, what is wrong with you? Your emotions make you irrational. And half the time I don't even understand why I'm feeling this. Nothing has occurred to me for me to feel this way, but I'm feeling this way. And then I was keeping all of that emotions. And what happens is, empaths, this is the communication that's been coming through me now that I channel, and this is why I've been doing all this research, so I know that I'm on the right track. All the stuff that's been coming out has been saying that empaths are soaking up everybody's emotions around them, and that there's a lot of energy vampires and psychic vampires, and poor empaths are these poor people that are completely drained every day, and they have all these social issues because they become so introverted because it's so draining to be mixing with other people, and they have all these health issues, which they can have health issues, but it's not because people are using them. And there's so much talk about empaths and narcissists, and
yes,
it irritates me because people paint narcissists out to be these horrible calculating monsters that are deliberately seeking out vulnerable empaths so they can suck the life out of them, and that's not what is happening.
No, I've been saying for years that they're just two sides of the same coin.
Exactly.
And that they don't even
duality.
But I don't, like an empath, when you're walking around the shopping centre, when you're unaware of what you are, you don't know that you are that.
Exactly.
And it's the same with some levels of narcissism. They don't know.
No, and they don't. And I have such a soft spot for narcissists, and I know people think that's weird, but I've spent such a huge portion of my career dealing with people with really severe narcissistic personality disorder. I grew up in a household with a narcissist, grandparents that were narcissists. It's a big part of my life. And most empaths are growing up around narcissists and having relationships with narcissists, and they have this sense of being a victim, that these narcissists are deliberately picking them out because they're so vulnerable, but it's actually the empath that is hooking into these narcissists, and there's a very good reason for that. The empaths are vital for what is happening with the world at the moment. Empaths have the ability to feel every single emotion that exists. It doesn't have to be triggered off from their own thought processes or their own experiences. They can feel emotions that are coming because they're Wi-Fi towers. They can pick up emotions coming in from anywhere. But the empaths are here to recalibrate the emotional default settings of everybody around them, because what happens with this human experience and having an ego as part of having the human experience is we experience fear. And I know that there is a analogy going around that fear is false evidence appearing real, but I call it fake emotion appearing real. And it isn't real emotion that is coming from source energy, that is coming from like the higher frequencies that we're supposed to be feeling. It's ego trying to match source like an artificial intelligence basically saying, well, I can have emotions too, and here they are, and it's all fear-based stuff. And fear is a very strong fake emotion because it is opposite and equal to love. And love comes from the divine and fear comes from this human ego that we have. So narcissists hardly experience any emotion at all. And everyone's, they're a monster, they're incapable of feeling love. But they don't like being like that. It's a horrible way for them to exist. They don't like it. They can't put their finger on what the issue is.
Thank you for saying that. I think that is so, so important that, you know, whenever I've spoken to people inside this arena and also outside about narcissism, they're painted as someone who is doing these things on purpose.
Yeah, they're not.
And I've never seen that. Well, of course.
Some do, but the majority of them don't. And more narcissistic personality disorder is coming through each generation. It has a physiological reason why they're narcissists, and then because there's a DNA thing there, they're mostly being born to a narcissistic parent who then cannot give them the emotional skill set when they're a toddler to deal with all these emotions that they're all of a sudden experiencing. They're not knowing how to deal with them properly. So they stop because their narcissistic parents saying you're too emotional, too sensitive. They shut down all of those emotions at that vital age where they start to experience them, and they switch themselves off, and then that further causes
all sorts of wounding around
in their brain, plus all their emotional
not being
stuff.
enough and not being loved and not being lovable, and all of those things that so many of us as healers help people with, that are really coming out these days.
So empaths need to understand they are very powerful. They are very powerful spiritual beings, emotional spiritual beings, and they have the ability, just like they feel like people have the ability to suck the energy out of them. It's not actually the case. They're hooking into everybody around them and recalibrating other people's energies. They're just not aware of it, so they're not retracting their energetic cords from those people and then recharging themselves. So they're feeling really drained. But the fact that they have that ability to do that means that it's in reverse. They can pass on high vibrating frequency emotions to other people that need it. And that's a very powerful thing to do. And empaths should understand the power that they have in these abilities, these energetic abilities, because they have the power to go around and start creating a lift in consciousness and a change in the way that humanity is consciously sending out thoughts and emotions. And once all the empaths realize that they can do that, the whole world will change.
See, I love that because currently empaths and in the recent past, empaths have been disempowered about their ability. And then what you've done just then is empower empaths or empathy, turn it into a superpower, so to speak, rather than a kryptonite.
Exactly. The word sensitive makes me so wary now because most of us are told you're too sensitive. And sensitive has this bad connotations attached to it now. And then you'll find a lot of empaths as calling themselves intuitive sensitive, extremely sensitive, emotionally sensitive.
Wow.
And then they're getting this I'm less than kind of thing happening with them, or I'm a victim. Oh, it's because I'm sensitive. I was, no, you're actually a friggin' warrior and you're here to change the earth, and I need you to hurry up and realize that that's why you're here, because I don't want my child growing up in an environment that's going to deteriorate with the likes of that current president of the United States and all of that mentality that's starting to hold really high power positions. I don't want my child growing up where that's considered the norm. I don't want narcissists to say that everyone who experiences emotions has obviously got a mental illness, because if that's allowed to continue, all of us empaths are going to get locked up in institutions.
Yeah.
We'll be considered mentally ill.
Well, it feels a little bit like the witch hunts and, those sorts of things in other ages. I have it on good authority that that sort of thing's never going to happen again. So I'm choosing to go with that. I do want to say that currently there's a big glump of, I make up my own words.
No, I like glum.
Of disempowered empaths.
Yes.
And indeed, they're disempowered warriors.
Yes.
They're disempowered light workers. They're disempowered world changers.
Yes.
And if they can just shift that tiny little shift in perspective that you've just given, they become empowered warriors. Exactly. And empowered changers of the world, because that's what we, I'm surrounded by people who are here to change the world. We all are.
Yes.
But to have them be empowered rather than disempowered truly will create a tidal wave of change.
They need to really have a look at their life. I've been doing a fair bit of research with empaths, a lot of questions. A lot of them have autoimmune disease. A lot of them have these chronic health diseases or disorders that cause physical pain and deterioration. A lot of them are diagnosed with bipolar disorder and tend to not be balanced with extreme emotion because they can't sort of ascertain what's theirs and what's everybody else's around them. So their consciousness can't cope with what's going on. A lot of them have had extremely traumatic experiences right throughout their entire life and then keep thinking, oh, it's another blow, it's another blow. But what I've come to learn, having led a life that was extremely addicted to drama and full of a lot of trauma, just systematically right through my life I've experienced big traumatic events. I was like, why has this occurred? And then through really honing in my spiritual health, I realized, whilst I was writing this book on empaths, it's transmuted into bitter blessings. We choose every traumatic experience that happens to us before we get here, and we do it for a very specific reason. And empaths tend to have more trauma than everybody else because of the huge lessons that they learn emotionally each time a trauma occurs.
Yeah.
So now I can look at each of my traumas and I can see, okay, it takes a long time to get this. I mean, some traumas, you don't kind of grasp why that happened for a long time. I had one that happened in 2005, and it's only at the end of last year that I finally understood why I had to experience that. But once you get in that zone where every bitter part of your life has a blessing in it, that in itself is so freeing and so empowering.
Yes.
Fear dissipates and you're not afraid of anything anymore, because you know if you are to experience something traumatic again, it's for a reason, it's for your betterment, and it's for greater good. And empaths will have huge experiences out of these traumas because they need to understand the large range of emotions that come into a person when they've gone through something traumatic. They need to work their way through it, and then that creates this wonderful ability to have such strong empathy for other people that have those emotions. But empaths need to release all of this stuff constantly, every single day, because if they don't release these emotions, they get trapped, and then that's when disease starts to happen.
It's really the discipline of someone on this path to have those little rituals in place or processes in place where they do those sorts of things. So that's a really good message. What I wanted to say was that, and again, we come full circle back to talking about flow, because as you start to do what you've just been talking about and you've cleared up all of those traumas and things within yourself, and you've figured out what the blessing is, and you can see how it will serve you in the future, you come into this beautiful place of flow where you absolutely know that life happens for you, not to you.
Absolutely.
And that just gives you such peace and such grace as you continue through life, taking on board anything that comes at you without it affecting your emotional state and without it becoming this big rift in your energy field. So I love what you've said there.
Once you really get that, it's the most empowering thing that you can ever experience. There is no more fear.
Yes.
Fear just goes, and you are then, as an empath, really connected into divine emotion and keeping the divine emotion, and anything that comes up that you know is a fear-based emotion, you know it's not yours anymore because you don't experience that kind of fear. So
exactly. So you can deal with it very quickly. You just immediately
let go of it.
Exactly. Perfect. What a beautiful way to end the conversation. Such great advice for the people who are listening. and encouragement for them, which, you know, I'm a great encourager. That's one of my gifts, is to encourage, not just as in the way that encouragement is currently acknowledged, but also encouragement is actually an act of empathy.
Yeah, because you can understand and you connect into the emotions of the other person. I see where you're at. And I've done this with my patients and my clients my entire working life. Yeah. I feel where you're at. I see where you're at, but I also see where you can go, because I'm not attached to where you are.
Beautiful, beautiful. Look, I wanted to just ask you very quickly if you would share your website with us, but more importantly, let us know how we can sign up for your webinar. Where are we going to find that information? Tell us when it's on as well.
Okay, the webinar is Valentine's Day, 11 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Saving Time. And the reason why I do Valentine's Day is because I want you to fall in life again by showing you how to get into flow and stop the hustle. And it can be found around Facebook at the moment. It's on my Facebook business page, which is Rebecca Gibson Coaching. And I also have a Facebook group where it's advertised in, which is Holistic Health for Life and Business.
By the way, guys, just interrupting, I'll put all these links either above the video or below the video, depending on where you're watching it. So they'll all be there.
Excellent. And my website is www.rebeccagibson, REBECCA GIBSON.com.au, because I'm Australian, so .au.
Fantastic. Rebecca, thank you so much for
This is
being my first guest.
I know.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it, and we've taken the conversation to all sorts of places today. I just wish that I had hours and hours to have these conversations.
Me too.
We'll have another one. Absolutely have another one, moving through the series that we're doing on Transformational Conversations. And thank you very much for watching today. Please do come back next week, same time, same place, and watch who we've got next time. I'm not giving any hints. We're just going to surprise you every Friday. Thank you.